Hey, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take about 10 minutes today to talk a little bit about claims, evidence, and reasoning as a follow up to our interpreting data lesson. Did you get a chance to finish that lesson up?
Yep.
Okay, great. And before we get going here, I just want to test a couple more things, make sure they're good on your end. I'm going to send you a chat message. Whoop, there we go. And can you see that on your screen? It says, can you see
Yes,
this?
I can.
Okay, super. So there's a couple places where it may ask you to submit a response, and we can see what everybody says, and then we'll talk about it. So if we do that, we'll just do that through the chat feature. And there is one thing as well that we'll do through Google Doc that I'll share with everybody, and you'll be able to interact with that on your screen too. So just let me know if you have any problems or questions as we go through, okay?
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to switch over to a screen share here. Give that just a moment. What you should see is like a PowerPoint slide.
Yep.
You see that? Okay, it says evidence, claims, and reasoning.
Yes.
Okay, super. So I just wanted to introduce this topic a little bit with a few pictures here. You'll see that there's a shot of some smokestacks. The one in the middle is actually from, I believe, Liberia, and it's a picture taken during an Ebola outbreak of a person that is obviously working with people that have the disease. And then also in the lower right, there's a little black-footed ferret, which is one of the most endangered mammals in North America. And I show these just because these are all scenarios where we might ask different kinds of scientific questions and want to investigate those questions to see if we can solve some kind of problem. So what we're going to be talking about today is really the core of that scientific process, which is to collect evidence and to use that evidence to make claims and then to explain in a logical way why those claims make sense. So let's take a look at an example here for all of you that are on the Hangout. This picture, what I'd like you to do in your chat right now is to make a couple of statements about what's going on in this picture. So let's see if everybody could write three statements that they would say are true about what's going on in this picture. Just take a moment to do that. Good, I hear some typing. Okay, so we have some responses on the screen. Kat, I see you wrote people marching against racial discrimination, police calling on the radio, and the NAACP is involved. Let's talk about that first one. You wrote people marching against racial discrimination. How do you know, why would you say that's true about this picture?
Well, it looks like there are a number of people literally marching in kind of a traditional formation that you would see if someone's going to march. There's a lot of protest signs that are identifying their cause being racial discrimination, and they want it to stop now.
Okay. And when would you say this picture was taken?
Oh gosh, I'm not good at times looking at this. I'm going to say like sometime in the 70s, maybe.
And why would you say sometime in the 70s?
Um, trying to look at the style of the signs and the clothes and trying to remember when these marches typically were taking place.
Okay, so you have some background knowledge maybe about when there might have been these kinds of marches going on, and this looks like maybe a scene from that time period, and you're also picking up on maybe changes, yeah, in the signs or in the clothes and so forth. So, uh, as a last question, why would you say that these people are marching against racial discrimination?
Well, it seems like the majority of folks marching seem to be of one race, although there is a gentleman and maybe his son or something who I can't tell if they're marching with him or not. So seeing that everyone is of the same ethnic group, at least by appearances, it seems like maybe that ethnic group, African Americans, is displeased with what's going on.
Okay, so what we just did is actually to engage a little bit in the scientific process here using claims, evidence, and reasoning. You made a claim that, and I'm going to advance the slide here. You made a claim that the people in that picture were marching against racial discrimination, and you knew that not because you necessarily probably saw or read about that picture before, but you picked up on some clues in the picture, like the signs they were carrying and how they were grouped together and what it looked like they were doing and so forth. You even had some clues about when that picture might have been taken, which you associated with a time when there were different kinds of marches or groups getting together and displaying their feelings about the in this case racial discrimination. So and then you're providing some kind of reason why they might do that, which was that you said they weren't pleased with what was going on in their society. So you can see there the little headline says the process of science involves making claims based on evidence and explaining our claims using scientific reasoning, and you just did that. So we're going to be doing this in the context of our biology class, but I wanted to give us a chance first to quickly define these, and then and then we're going to go to practice. So right now, what I'd like everyone to do is to provide on the chat to say a couple words of what they think these three terms, how they would define these three terms. So how would you define a claim? How would you define evidence? And what does the word reasoning mean to you? And actually, we'll do this, sorry, we won't do this on the chat. We'll do this on the shared Google Doc here so everyone can participate. Let me bring that up. Okay, that's up on my screen, so you all should see it. And you can see, you just put your name in there and then your definition for each of these. So let's give that a shot. Take a moment and do that.
I can't see it yet. It's still on the slideshow.
Okay, let's turn the slideshow off. And this is the part I talked to you about just a few moments ago.
Yep.
Okay, you got it? All right. Okay, super. We've got some responses up there on the screen. So let's see. We said that a claim, Kat, you wrote something you think is true. And for evidence, you wrote clues or observations. And for reasoning, you wrote using logic and ideas based on facts. All right. Well, I think those are probably good definitions. If we had more people participating, we would just kind of discuss a little bit and come up with a class definition here, but I think those will get us going for now. So let's go back to the screen share. And let me know, Kat, if you see the slides again.
Yep, it's back on.
Okay, super. So this time we're going to just go through a little example here using another type of evidence. Instead of using a photograph, we're going to look at a graph. And this graph you can see over on the left-hand side is carbon dioxide emissions per capita. That means per person in this case in a country. And then on the bottom it's gross domestic product, which is the purchasing power per capita in the country. So it's looking at basically how much money people have and how much carbon dioxide per person is emitted in a country. And all the different countries are shown there, and you can see the names of them. The larger the name, the larger the population. And then they also have the little circles which show us how much carbon dioxide they emit in total. So you can see like the USA and China there have the largest circle. So in total they emit the most carbon dioxide. So let's use that graph for a moment and let's think about what we just did, claim, evidence, and reasoning. Looking at that graph, let's on our chat make a claim. What would you claim? What would you say is true? Because that's how we define claim for about carbon dioxide emissions and wealth or money based on this graph. Go ahead and everybody put that onto the chat there and we can see what people think. Okay, got some responses. Kat, you said the more wealth you have, the more emissions you tend to have. And why do you think that's true?
Well, it just seems like there's a lot more bigger circles and bubbles as you get higher on the X and Y axis.
Okay, so as you go sort of to the right across the bottom, as you get toward more or higher gross domestic product, more money, more wealth, then you're also getting more carbon dioxide emissions because you're going up on the y-axis. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here's an example of a claim similar to yours. It says gross domestic product is a more reliable indicator of carbon dioxide emissions than population size or geographic location. Now the reason I wrote this claim, but it's really similar to yours. The reason I wrote this one is just because it refers to some of the other information on the graph as well. And then you can see below that I put a few pieces of what I would call evidence for that. So trying to describe from the graph why I think that's true. And I agree with you that the carbon dioxide emissions definitely go up as the GDP goes up as well. So in this case, I noticed that there were a few outliers in the data. And do you remember what outliers are?
Things that kind of don't really go along with your base assumption.
Yeah, exactly. You know, these would be like data points that don't really fit with most of the rest of them, right? So we might have, for example, if we were saying the more wealth you have, the more emissions you tend to have, it would be like if you had one country that was very, very wealthy but had almost no emissions, that would be an outlier. And we don't really have many of those on the graph if we look back at that. Most of the countries sort of fit along the general trend, although there are a few. If you look kind of toward the bottom there on the left-hand side, you can see Cambodia kind of off on its own, or sort of on the upper left-hand side, you see Uzbekistan and Mongolia are a little bit separated from the rest of them. So there are a few outliers, but not really too many. And to me, that's kind of evidence of this trend. And you can see some of the other pieces of evidence. So I'm making my claim. Or you're making your claim, and then we're just identifying the evidence just like we did with the picture. There are clues or things that we're picking up on that allow us to support that claim. And then lastly, the reasoning piece is basically explaining that. So I'll give you a moment here, just read through my explanation, and as you do that, what I want you to think about is what are some general principles or rules, kind of science principles or science rules that I'm using to help explain what's going on in this graph, okay? So take a moment, read through, and let me know when you're ready to discuss it, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay, I read it.
Okay, so as you read through that, did anything jump out at you that you would say is sort of a general rule or principle that I use to help support my explanation?
Um, Sorry, can you rephrase that? Like a general rule of science or a general kind of theme within your reasoning?
Yeah, that's a good question. More like a general rule of science. So, for example, when we were looking at the picture of the demonstration, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you picked up on some things around like what the signs look like and the clothing that maybe this took place in the 1970s, and so you were sort
Mm-hmm.
of applying a sort of a general rule of what people wore and what signs looked like back then, and applying it to this scene to sort of draw the conclusion that maybe it was taken at the same time. We don't really know. This picture could have been taken, yesterday, but probably it wasn't based on those clues. So just kind of looking at general rules, sort of science rules or principles in this case.
Right. Well, I mean, in the first statement, you're actually using a law of in science.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
mhm. And talking about how energy is used and how it's also conserved. And then later on, you're actually also talking about how economies work and how they grow. And when you apply those two together, what is needed to grow an economy, as far as the transport and export and import of goods, that is obviously a very carbon emission high area. So you put those together, then it makes sense together.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm doing, right, is I'm trying to take my specific situation, my specific question about wealth and about carbon dioxide emissions, and I'm trying to explain why, as a country gets more wealthy, the carbon dioxide emissions might go up. And you're exactly right. Like in that first sentence, I'm talking about how it takes energy in order to do things that might be going on in a country as the GDP goes up, right? You can't, for example, build things or transport goods to sell them without using energy. And the first law of thermodynamics tells us that. I also highlighted the one that I'm talking about combustion reactions and how when you burn things like coal or fossil fuels, you're going to produce heat, but you're also going to produce carbon dioxide. So you have to produce carbon dioxide if you're going to use those fuels. That's sort of a general rule. And then the last one is maybe a little less from the physical sciences, but more from economics, which is just that this idea that as you increase wealth, you would or as you increase the GDP, that would be a result of a growing economy. So usually, if the economy is growing, then GDP is also going up. That's sort of a general rule in economics. So I'm trying to use those general rules to explain the situation that I'm talking about or the graph that I was looking at. So that's the claims, evidence, and reasoning type framework, making a claim, showing what evidence you have for that claim, and then trying to explain it using these sort of general rules. So for the assignment, going off of this session, we're going to be looking at the question of, does a person's gender affect their intelligence as measured by IQ tests? And a couple things there just quickly. One is just the idea of intelligence can mean a lot of different things. In this case, they're just talking about scores on IQ tests. So as you read the article, you have to keep that in mind, that they don't mean intelligence in a real general way. They just mean about the scores. And then lastly, in the article, they talk about statistical significance. And that just means that when they were collecting data and comparing different groups, they were doing some analysis to find out, are the groups really different or are they actually pretty much the same? So if groups are statistically significantly different, it just means that when they did that analysis, they concluded that the groups were actually different enough where they could say that it was significant. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, super. So you have this in your drive, this presentation and the reading and so forth, but you can see here if to access the article, either pull it up as that document in your drive, or you can go to the web address here. And then to submit the assignment, you'll do it on a Google form, and I sent that to you in your Gmail, or you can just go to the link here as well to complete it. So do you have any last questions?
Nope, I think I got it.
Okay, super. Thanks. I'll see your work soon.